Welcome back to another Kray video. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss any videos. And for people really interested in the Krays, check out our private Facebook group, Krays, Crime Lords of London. We're a friendly and moderated group which has been running since January 2018. Please come and give us a try.
In the 1960s, the London underworld was run by two gangs, the Krays in the East End, and, south of the river, me and my brother Eddie, the Richardsons. When the two rival firms trespassed into each other's manor, it meant trouble. My name is Charlie Richardson, and in 1967, I was convicted on charges of violence, fraud and extortion at an Old Bailey trial, during which the judge described me as a disgrace to society. I got sentenced to 25 years in prison, but was actually released in 1984. This is my story, told in my own words. I will talk of the world I inhabited, some businesses above board, and others less so. Involvement with gaming clubs, drinking clubs, the motor trade and strip clubs. I will also talk about mafia connections and friends in the government. My network was very wide indeed. I will tell of all this, of my eventual arrest and, bitterly, my trial. I will speak of the years in Durham and Wandsworth jails and what I learned there. I will reveal all about my escape and the chance encounter which had me back in prison for the final 3.5 years. I will discuss all of my business interests and associates of today. Some of them may find it uncomfortable listening. This isn't a pretty story, but it's a riveting one, and I have much to say on the subject of British justice. When we were running a number of businesses in southeast London, we were attacked one afternoon by a rival organisation led by the future great train robber, Charlie Wilson, who wanted to sort us out. They came with shotguns and were firing all over the place. We never had guns, so we were busy hiding around the yard while they tried to kill us. Eventually, with all the racket going on, the police sirens could be heard screaming through the streets, heading for the scrap yard. Everything stopped. We opened the gates and hid the mob with their shotguns and all. The police were puzzled to discover business as usual. When they claimed shots had been reported, we just laughed and said we were trying to fix up an old wreck of a car that kept backfiring. They had a sniff around and went away, uneasy but unable to do anything. I opened a bottle of whiskey and the whole lot of us had a good laugh. We may have been rivals, but we had a common enemy, and when it surfaced, our loyalty to each other was greater than anything. Is that so unusual? During wartime, Tory and Labour MPs unite. Minor rivalries are forgotten while a crisis exists, but small-time crooks will sell their grandmother, their children and their wives for a reduced jail sentence, and we had some of those selling their pathetic, worthless souls to an ex-fascist judge and a bunch of career coppers for a shorter time inside. The longer our sentence, the shorter theirs would be. What use is a bag of minnows and sprats compared with a bloody great thrashing salmon? And like the fisherman's tales, the fish were getting bigger and bigger with every detail of the story. It seems we agreed to let squealer James Taggart go on a majority verdict, providing he paid us the princely sum of 1,200 quid he was supposed to be worth. Taggart told the court that he was then allowed to get dressed. The scene was changing, and the audience was going to get bored with a fully clothed victim. Just as the press were thinking it was time to get round to the pub for a lunchtime pint, Chief Prosecuting Counsel for the Crown, Seabag Shaw, pulled another rabbit out of the hat. It was the same as before, but it worked anyway. He interrupted Taggart. "Just pause there for a minute. What about your underwear?" Heads turned back to Taggart. Yes. What did happen to his underwear? Surely he was not going to put on those now historic blood-soaked undies, which had been used mercilessly to wipe the wall and floor clean of his own blood. Taggart, as if he had forgotten his lines, was grateful to be prompted and solve this little mystery for us. He answered Seabag, "No, not my underwear. First of all, Clark helped me outside." There were either buckets or bowls of cold water poured over my head. Apparently there is a water tap right outside the office, so you were allowed to wash off and dry? Yes, sir. And then did you put on your trousers and jacket? Yes, sir. Also, sir, I think I mentioned earlier as to whether or not my socks were on or off. I had no socks because I left with just shoes on my bare feet. So, when you say you were naked, you mean you were absolutely naked? Yes, sir. This was all very vital. Up until then we had, of course, imagined a gruesome scene where a man was not fully naked. He had his socks on, and being an Englishman, this was terribly important. It meant that he had been allowed to retain some small shred of dignity. His little pink willy was exposed, but at least he had his socks on. Now, heaven forbid, what did we learn but that this brutality took place without his socks? I nearly laughed out loud. But then something even funnier happened. It seems that after brutally assaulting this poor, pathetic, sockless creature for several hours and threatening to kill him, he asked us if he could give us a post-dated check. And being reasonable people, despite all evidence to the contrary, we accepted. It was turning into a farce. While chuckling away at this revelation, we were startled to learn that Taggart was then escorted to his car and he drove all the way home to Hampstead. After all that, repeated beatings and pools of blood, he apparently just drove home. I looked around the courtroom thinking that at last they would all realize that they had just heard a fairy story, but they sat in open-mouthed wonder. They wanted to believe Taggart. If he had been lying, it would have been just another disappointment in lives already full of daily letdowns and sinking hearts. It was madness, and I wanted to run away from it all, like I had done so many times before when I found myself surrounded by lunatics. Madmen do not think that they are mad, and the crazy people who inhabit courtrooms are perverted weirdos who think they are the last corner of sanity in a decaying world. By the time I was 14, I had a basic understanding of how the courts operated. I also had a good idea how cars worked, and sometimes involvement with one would bring me to the other. I loved driving, and in those days, cars were very easy to unlock and start without proper keys. When we went out for a night on the town to meet girls, we would just take a car for the night and park it around the corner when we came home. We got to be fussy about which type of car we took, and it was while a friend and I were looking over a car near East Street Market that a copper came running up to us and we scarpered. 10 minutes later, we were sitting in a cafe having a cup of tea, and the copper came in to nick us both. There was a bunch of car keys in my pocket, which was fairly damning evidence. They gave us a good smack at the police station and sent for our parents. When my friend's dad came, there was a bit of a commotion, but as we sat on a bench in the courtroom, I could sense that there was something funny going on. In the court, I soon found out what had happened. Another deal had been struck. I was apparently trying to steal the car, and the other boy was some distance away. It looked once again like I was going to take the full rap, but the magistrate asked me if I had any questions. To everyone's surprise, I said that I wanted to ask the policeman some questions. I knew the local geography so well that I was able to run rings round the copper, and in the end, he had to admit that he could not possibly have seen my friend at all if he was 30 yards from me, and that he had not actually seen me get into or even try to get into the car. He also had to admit that he did not know if any of the keys I had in my possession actually fitted the car's locks. I explained to the magistrate that I collected keys, that I was only looking at the car admiringly because it was smart, and that we only ran off because a lumbering great copper came tearing towards us. We got off completely. My friend's dad was very impressed and walked up to me with a big smile and his hand out to congratulate me. I looked at his hand and then into his eyes and said, "Fuck off, bastard. You were ready to drop me in it." His smile disappeared. He was a hard man, but he was a bit shamefaced that he had been so ready to drop me in it in order to save his son. There are two ways that you can learn to swim. You can have an instructor at school teach you properly, a bit at a time, exercise by exercise, until you swim efficiently and happily. The other way is to jump in the deep end, splutter away, and learn from watching other people until you are swimming better than they are. With everything in life, I jumped in at the deep end. Caution and security stop people from really living. Work hard all week, get pissed on a Saturday night, 2 weeks in Butlins or Benidorm, pay the electric, and wait to die. Always frightened, full of ideas, yeah, but no nerve to try them. Never bite off more than you can chew, so nibble away until you're freezing in the one room of your council flat, a few days away from death, but still worried about the electricity bill. Not for me. I've always thought that you should bite off more than you can chew, then chew it. You'll be surprised to find out how easy to digest it really is. I learned to drive cars by stealing them. In fact, I knew how to steal a car before I could drive one. It was a sensible progression because the first few cars ended up smashed into other ones. Eventually I got the hang of it and I loved driving. I was about 13 or 14, so there was no question of owning a car. Stealing was so simple that I would plan a trip and then just before I went out, pick a car to take me there. Sometimes I had dates with girls and would turn up in a car I had nicked only a few minutes ago. They would be amazed because even though I told them all I was 18, they didn't believe me. I knew I did not look anything like that age, and anyway, who had a car that young in those days? But like everyone else, they believed what they wanted to believe. It was good to have something to impress the girls with, because I don't know if I had much else. I had money from scrap and all sorts of small burglaries, so I could afford good clothes and fashionable gear. But even in the latest and best teddy boy gear, complete with quiff, I somehow always felt I didn't look quite right. There was nothing I could do about it, but it always made me feel a little shy and self-conscious with girls, especially at dance halls. But it was a different matter at the end of the evening, when they were all worried about catching the last bus home or having to walk, and I would offer them a lift. They would be very suspicious, but it was too good a chance to miss. I would walk out of the dance hall with a girl, triumphant and making sure my friends would be taking note. We would walk round the corner, and I would suggest she got us a bag of chips while I got the car. A few minutes later, I would roll up in a beautiful, recently acquired motor with big plush bench seats and drive a stunned and speechless girl home. By the end of the evening, she was seeing me in a very different light. Although I usually used a different car to get me there and get me home, I did make the mistake once of using the same car to get me and a friend to Brixton roller skating rink and take us home again. I had met a girl at the rink and offered her a lift to Lewisham, and so the three of us set off. I was showing off a bit and being a bit nippy on the road. She was squealing with pleasure every time I cut in front of another car and screaming when I took corners almost on two wheels. I dropped her off at her home, and the two of us were having a great time until suddenly a police car was racing beside us on the Old Kent Road, with the bells ringing and the copper in the front shouting and waving to us to pull over. No bloody chance. I had a choice. Pull over, get my head kicked in and be charged with nicking the car, or carry on, get caught anyway, and have my head kicked in and be charged. It was an easy decision. At least this way, I might even get away. The sinking dread I felt when the copper appeared was replaced immediately by excitement as my foot hit the accelerator and the car shot forward. It made their day too. Where would they be without the likes of me to make their jobs exciting? Where would all the American films get their stories from if people like me did not give them a good car chase? It was not my car, and so I couldn't give a shit what happened to it or anything else that got in the way. I jumped the car onto the pavement, screeched over into the oncoming traffic, missing trams by a fraction of a second, and hit a road sign with the wing. My mate was loving it. He had his head out of the window, yelling back at the police. I dodged around, my foot always on the floor, as if the car was a bumper ride at the fairground. I laughed at the abuse my friend was giving the coppers as I tore round a bend and smashed straight into a wall. The car was a write-off, and my passenger and I were pretty dazed. But before the police could get their doors open and adjust their fat asses to running gear, we were off down the street and dodging through people's backyards. I am sure they all went for me, because as I came round a corner, I was tackled and brought to the ground by a massive copper who did his best to control my kicking and punching until another three arrived, and they took me to the station where, of course, they put me in a cell and kicked the shit out of me. A few days later, I was up again in Lambeth Juvenile Court. The four coppers who had seen me home that night had washed my blood off their boots and were waiting for the case. They paced up and down impatiently. No wonder there are so few bobbies on the beat to help old ladies cross the road. They're all inside courts, waiting for some case or other. After a while, one of them approached me and asked me how I was planning to plead. I looked up at him, a beaten boy, anxious to please. "Guilty, sir. What else can I say? You caught me red-handed, and there's four of your lot and nobody to speak for me." He smiled and walked back to his colleagues. They had a chat and realized that there was not much point in all of them hanging around. It was, as they say, an open and shut case. So three of them took off to cause more trouble on the streets, leaving the one who talked to me to give his evidence. When I got into the dock, I pleaded not guilty. I had met a girl at the skating rink and escorted her home on the bus. I held out a ticket stub and quoted the price. I was walking all the way home from Lewisham because I had no money when these three policemen jumped out at me and arrested me for stealing a car when I couldn't even drive. The copper was astonished. He was left on his own, and one of the magistrates asked where the other witnesses were. They were suspicious of the police sometimes, and I thought I might be going to get off, but they decided to remand me on my mother's bail to give me time to produce the girl. That was going to be a serious problem. I knew her address because I'd driven her home, but she had no idea that the car was stolen. She could not be counted on to lie for me. What was worse, if she attended the court, she would find out my real age. That would have been embarrassing, and despite my original Irish heritage, there was enough Englishness in me to risk jail rather than lose face with a girl. I carefully briefed three friends to testify that they had been at the skating rink with me that night, and that one of them had even got onto the same bus as me and the girl. They did me proud in court the next week as I explained that I could not find the girl. I was nearly home and dry. There were 4 of them and 5 of us, and 3 suspicious magistrates. One of the latter was a woman, and she was not so easy to convince. She decided that I should be given another week to find the girl. I didn't even bother to try, but the police did, and God knows how, but they found her. They were determined to sort me out well and truly. She appeared the following week, very properly briefed. It was obvious that whatever impression I might have made on her that night, she had not burned a candle in her window for me since. I got 3 years in an approved school and looked around to see the horror on my mother's face. I ignored the smiles of the police as I was taken to the van. In the last few minutes I had with my mother, I promised her that I would behave myself at the school and sort myself out when I got home. She was in tears. I was turning out just like my dad. I wanted to prove her wrong, but not just yet. As they walked me to the little bus with bars on the windows, I flew. I raced past 3 of the cops who had arrested me and dashed into Woolworths. They all gave chase as I pushed between shoppers and shelves, diving under people, jumping from the sweet counter to the electrical goods, almost into the arms of a policeman. I got a few punches in the mouth before they installed me firmly on the bus bound for the Ardale-approved school. And that brings us to the end in this part. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you again in the next one.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please join our Facebook group. It's called Krays Crime Lords of London. We're a friendly moderated group with over 1,000 Kray and other celebrated gangster videos available for view. There's also thousands of images in the photos sections. The link for the group is in the YouTube description section.